Hi everyone, just a quick note before we jump into this episode of Moonee Valley Voices. This week we were joined by Samantha Byrne, who joined us in a personal capacity. Any opinions or thoughts she expressed were her own personal opinions and not necessarily reflective of Moonee Valley City Council or her fellow councillors. So we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sam and stay tuned for the full episode. Hello and welcome back to the Moonee Valley Voices, the local podcast where we talk to wonderful people from the community doing great things. And today we've got a guest that I'm sure many of you will be aware of, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Welcome, Councillor.
Hi, thank you for having me on today.
We've spoken a lot over the last few years, so good to get one on the record and have a little bit of a chat about your connections to Moonee Valley, and maybe we'll learn a little bit about what actually got you interested in council and that sort of thing as well.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Moonee Valley through and through. Happy to share.
Yeah, so let's start with that. Talk to us about your connection to Moonee Valley. You grew up in the area?
I did.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose if I track all the way back, my grandfather built a house on Buckley Street.
Yeah.
And then my mum went to Aberfeldy Primary School, and then I went to Aberfeldy Primary School. Lived in Aberfeldy. I eventually moved to East Keilor.
Yep.
And now my kids are at a local school as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my side. Then my husband's side, more Essendon and North Essendon.
Yeah.
Yes, haven't really left. So very, I suppose, Moonee Valley-like when two Essendon kids get together and have a family and stay in Moonee Valley.
Fantastic. And so what sort of kept you in the area? So what do you love about living in Moonee Valley?
Look, I'm a Steel Creek fan. I've always been a waterway fan just in general. I grew up very close to the Maribyrnong River, but I actually think Steel Creek is particularly special.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about Moonee Valley. I think that it's really special. People don't leave. We're known as a municipality that people are incredibly proud of. Everyone knows everyone. As I said before, everyone kind of marries everyone.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Just love it.
And so after high school, what sort of stuff did you do? Was council always something you really wanted to get involved in, or what were you doing, after high school and that sort of thing?
Not at all.
No.
I didn't really know very much about council. I knew that I was very proud of where I lived and where I worked and played and whatnot. But no, I was always very health science based.
Yeah.
I'm a qualified podiatrist. So straight after high school, went to university, studied podiatry, and I always thought that was going to be my, big future career, speaking at international conferences and whatnot. Never quite reached there. Obviously sort of detoured a little bit. I was working in the local community health centre on Matthews Avenue.
Oh, there you go.
For a number of years.
Yeah.
And it was through the community health centre where I realised how much I really did love the community, and someone said to me one day, you should run for council. And I thought, oh, what's that?
Yeah. So was there a particular, if you think back to the first time you ran for council, was there a particular issue that really got you interested and that drove you to sort of, I'd love to be able to make a mark on this or have an impact on this?
I've probably always been interested in anything going on in the community. Personally, there was a development going on around where I was living, and I think that probably got me a little bit more interested than I otherwise would have. Housing development, I see the need for it, but when you're really stuck in the middle of it, it can be hard, and I did learn the process a little bit through that. As I mentioned, working in the community health centre, and just speaking to a lot of community people through that. I was fortunate enough to be awarded an award by the Mayor at the time, former Councillor Narelle Sharp, a podiatry award, and that was the first time I stepped foot into the chamber. And I thought, oh, this is a bit different. What do they do in here? I got to meet a few of the councillors, and I thought, oh, maybe I could have a look at this.
Okay, so we're into term 3, I think, at the moment as a councillor.
Yeah.
Has it changed? What was campaigning like for term 1? Campaigning for term 3? I feel like it's a lot's changed. I don't know. That's just from my outside looking in, I guess, perspective. But how have you felt like it sort of changed?
Oh, absolutely. So the first time I ran was in 2016, and I was absolutely the underdog. I was just the young kid that was a podiatrist that no one sort of really knew, but or new on a large scale anyway. And I was running against some very high profile people. That was when it was multi-member wards.
Yeah.
So there were 3 people to get elected.
Yeah.
And I was going to have to effectively take the spot of an incumbent, which was always really hard. But I think being naive in that situation worked in my favour.
Yeah.
And I really thought that there needed to be someone younger on council at the time.
Yeah.
There wasn't particularly. I was the youngest ever independent at the time to be elected onto the council. Now there's been much younger since then. It just shows how it's all changed. So that was different. And then I suppose we had another council election in 2020, which was completely different. That was COVID.
COVID times, yeah.
So different type of campaigning.
I mean, they're always postal ballots, aren't they? The council.
Yes, in Moonee Valley they have been, but that was still, again, 3 people. But COVID, so people were, interestingly enough, we were often in lockdowns, but people were really talking to their neighbours a lot. People knew local issues at that time.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting election. And then 2024, it completely changed. And we went into single-member wards, whereas instead of 3 people looking after about 30,000 people, we went to 1 person looking after 10,000. So 9 single-member wards, which is where I've landed in Steel Creek Ward. Yeah.
So how do you feel like council, we're still very early in this term, I know, what were the benefits? And again, we should highlight that you're just speaking on your own behalf here. You're not representing council's views. But in terms of how you see it operationally, what were the benefits of a multi-member ward? What's changing with the single-member wards?
It's I think I like it. I didn't think that I was going to. It's hard to tell, but I feel like you've got a much smaller area to cover, but you have to know every crack in the footpath. You have to know every single street where the residents want speed humps or don't want speed humps, or really connected in with every single little thing. Whereas when you were looking after all the way from Avondale Heights to Airport West and Nidri, you had I suppose a broader scope, but also in multi-member wards, you could sort of understand that one of your other councillors might have a particular strength. And I suppose in Rosehill Ward, I worked alongside Councillor John Sypek for a long time, who could speak 4 languages. So that worked really well in a lot of cases. Whereas so there's benefits to that. You could sort of really bounce ideas off each other. And that was one of my fears with single-member wards, not to be able to go to and fro other councillors. But I've actually realised that I work very well with my neighbouring wards now, a bit different. So I still work just as closely with Councillor Sypek or Councillor Barnes or Councillor Jones.
No, fantastic. And so we touched a little bit there on the development aspect of things and how that was something that sort of an issue that got you more intrigued in local council. And obviously this is a big issue that council will have to work through this term with the state activity centre sort of being dropped on you guys, I guess, to sort of try and manage. And I know a lot of the detail is still up in the air. But as a councillor, I'm sure you're getting a lot of feedback from residents and people in your sort of ward. What are the sort of concerns that are coming across your desk?
Obviously, just as you mentioned before, speaking as myself, not the spokesperson for council. People are worried about overdevelopment. There's no doubt about that. Melbourne needs more housing. And I think people tend to be acknowledging that. Not many people really want this amount of housing, I suppose, and they don't really want their local amenities changed. They still want to be able to get into the local schools. They still want to be able to get into the local sporting clubs. They don't want to have to fight for parking. And I suppose those concerns have been ongoing for quite a while. This has just intensified them very quickly.
Because, there are pockets already where parking's difficult. It's hard to get into the local club, soccer, sports club, whether that's soccer, footy, whatever. They're all pretty much at capacity. The schools are obviously another issue. So we probably already felt like we were getting to this sort of choke point almost, if that's the right word for it. I'm not sure. But it does seem to be a big concern that people are worried that this is going to be intensified now if we were to just dramatically increase the number of sort of developments that are allowed to go up. What are your sort of own personal concerns for the ward that you look after? Because I know your ward sort of comes up towards Keilor Road, and that's obviously one of the major hubs of where this stuff's going to go. And I know there was a good video you did with Councillor Byrne, sort of just visually sort of, I guess, showing this is a 4-story building. This could be double that, with these plans. What's the sort of concerns you've had, but, I guess, looking at the details that you've been able to see? Or
Again, just my own thoughts, not council's. This is a state government process. Council did put forward a submission. My understanding is that they're not taking any more submissions. It's pretty well done, but they are slowly drip feeding, I suppose I can say that. There seems to be something coming out every day or two in regards to how it's new media statements and whatnot are coming out in terms of how they're going to get houses into Victoria, or dwellings into Victoria. I suppose the concern for me is it is really they're big. They're big. If you think of the NAB Tower, which is what Councillor Barnes and I were standing in front of, that's 4 stories, and they're talking up to 8 stories, which is double that big building. Between Hoffman's Road and Matthews Avenue. And I think about how much people love Keilor Road, and I'm sure people think, I can do with a bit of a spruce.
Sure.
Absolutely. But a lot of people love dining out the front, particularly on that one side of the road. And, the wind that those sort of buildings can create is, I suppose, a little bit of a concern. Where are people going to park? That's already an issue along Keilor Road. So that particular part of Keilor Road, which falls into my ward, is probably, I would say, the bit people are talking about the most to me. But that might just be because that's where I represent. I know that Councillor Barnes is saying down where he is, there's other issues as well. 8 stories is big, and a lot of those businesses at the moment are only 1, some are 2, except for that NAB building, which is so big.
It's a lot. And there's a lot of, I guess, concern around, a big reason for doing this is the idea of creating more affordable housing. And again, not a heap of detail around, how much of this new housing will actually be affordable. I mean, construction costs, you speak to any builder, they'll tell you construction costs are sky high, if you'll pardon the pun. But, I imagine just to acquire some of these sites is going to be quite expensive as well. How affordable can the housing be? I guess that's another question.
Will be really interesting to see how it rolls out. So there are some sites which can go up to 10 stories. So where we were filming from, that site where the Woolies is, can be up to 10. But yes, developers aren't going to develop unless there's obviously money involved, and we'll have to see. And I think there'll be more that comes out, and it's not all going to happen overnight. I don't want there to be alarm bells and for everyone to go, oh my gosh, everything's going to change straight away. But there will be change, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. On a personal note, I really do hope some of the infrastructure changes occur prior to a lot more houses and dwellings going in.
There is, I think, provision for developers will need to apportion a certain amount to infrastructure costs. But again, not really clear what amount. Is there does it have to go to a school? Does it have to go to a park? Does it, and who decides where that, that fund goes as well? That's another sort of interesting pickle.
Definitely a lot to still be worked through or communicated, and how it will actually play out in real life.
So I guess one thing I wouldn't mind maybe trying to get across, because we have had Livable Moonee Valley on the show before, and so we've had that sort of community, concerns sort of brought across on the pod before. But I thought, given we've got a councillor in the room, it might be interesting to just hear, at the moment, with planning, obviously there are things that come through to the meeting, and I know everything's judged on its own merits, etc. But can you maybe just talk through what that process looks like today, in terms of when there's a potential development that's come up to a meeting? Like, what are you guys sort of deciding on, and how does that sort of process work?
Sure. So often if someone wants to have, they put in an application, there can be certain triggers in terms of when it comes to council laws for a decision. One thing that a lot of people don't realise is that most decisions are not made by council laws.
Yeah.
Only about 5% are actually made by council laws, and the rest are made by the staff. They're delegated to the staff. The officers, I should say. And people can often have their say. So the neighbouring residents or within a radius, they might say, I suppose the objections really vary. They can be everything from they want the setback change to they don't like the colour to they don't like the height to they want more space. Objections very much vary. And then depending on where it lands, the decision lands. When it lands, people normally have the right to then take that to VCAT. And then that can either be from the objectors or the applicant.
Sure.
Based on what the council decision is.
Yeah. So it only really comes to councillors if there's been some sort of objection at the officer stage, or
there are other triggers that can come to councillors. Councillors can pull it in. But again, there are, I suppose, a few technicalities. I don't want to speak on behalf of council too much in that space. And I would strongly recommend if anybody does want to lodge an objection into any planning application, have a look online to see what the current regs are.
And I guess we were trying to sort of talk about this a little bit before we jumped on, but we're still not really clear on how this whole process will change once these activity centres sort of really come into play. Yeah. My understanding was always that if it's deemed to comply, that's it. It gets the tick. It's done. No one can really do much about it.
The Premier's come out with some pretty strong words in regards to councils having their planning powers potentially taken off them if we're not working towards getting up to that massive number of increased dwellings. I don't want to get myself in trouble here. But no, I think that deemed to comply, people will have my understanding is that they'll have a list of rules and they can go through, and if they tick particular boxes, only in the core, it won't affect the catchment is my understanding.
Okay, right.
And if they tick those boxes, then I believe people can still put forward their thoughts and a decision can be made, but I don't think there'll be any appeal process. But in saying that, I don't know, maybe invite the Premier on and then they can answer some questions.
Or maybe one of our local members will jump on. I'll have to extend the invitation. So. Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. So, and just in general in local government, I know you have to work with other councillors and you have to take feedback from people in the community, and I can't imagine there's too many issues where everyone always ends up happy at the end of the day.
Well, interesting you say that because we probably have, let's say, 15 items on a council agenda, and I would say 12 to 13 are probably unanimous. Every meeting. So there are a lot of things that, yes, people are happy about, but the ones that get the media attention are the ones that are a bit more
contentious or have a bit of debate, which is not a bad thing. Debate's normally a good thing in council sometimes as well. How do you sort of balance the need to, sort of advocate for the people that you're representing as a councillor, but also working with people who, are advocating for people for a different ward, might have a different view on things, or might just, I'm sure everyone's genuinely fighting for what they believe is the right thing to do. How do you sort of balance those moments where it can be sort of hard to have those debates and try and find a common ground for everyone?
Always learning, always trying to improve. But one of the first ever debates I was ever in was in regards to a dog park, and I often think back to it because there was a group of people, they loved their dogs. All they wanted was somewhere fun for their dogs to go. And they were going to do anything to get this wonderful dog park up. And you think, of course, I love dogs. Of course we want a dog park. Easy, right? And then you hear the other side, which is, but I live on that street and it's going to increase traffic and there's going to be dog poo and the barking. And you think, oh, yeah, that would be really tough. And then you think you can have like two different camps having absolutely legitimate, wonderful reasons for why they are so passionate about their cause. And finding that, middle ground, if there is one, it can be tricky. But the more you work through things, you often can find a solution. And I think this particular one was for Alf Pierce Dog Park, and sometimes it can be about making it slightly smaller, further away from the residents, ensuring there's, the doggy bags available,
Sure, yeah.
certain hours.
Yeah.
You can get to a place where it's okay and people are happy.
Yeah.
And I often think back to that because I understood both sides. And whenever there's a tricky debate, I often think, okay, this person might just be the resident in this situation. I see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
On that ground.
Yeah. So, like, that's a good example because, like you said, there were modifications perhaps to the dog park that would make it more palatable, I guess, for the people that have to live across the road from it. I mean, it's a tough one too because when people live across the road from parks, etc., they are sort of public land too. It's people from the public will want to use it for public uses, whether that's sport, whether that's the dog parks, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, and look, that come up a lot with all this extra development that's going on.
Yeah.
We're going to have almost twice the amount of people living in the same area. Open space will be probably fought for. It's already fought for.
It's already fought for. Yeah.
Even more.
Yeah. Is that one of the biggest challenges of being a councillor in this particular council? Because it's such a landlocked municipality. So many people, like you say, love living here, want to continue living here, want their kids to live here eventually. But there is only, you can't build multi-storey parks or, you know what I mean? Like, is that always a really hard part of being a councillor?
Maybe we need to start building double-storey parks. Might be expensive, but could win a few awards for that maybe.
That's right.
We're going to have to be creative with our open space. There's no doubt about it. We're going to have to really make sure we're using it the best way possible.
Yeah.
It is tricky. People love open space in Moonee Valley. It's something that's really special. As I said, when we opened this, like, I love the waterways. I love just going, zoning out from the chaos. And yes, using our open space appropriately, making sure that everyone gets it for their little need, whether that's having a barbecue or going for a run or playing sport or just sitting there watching the birds and the bees, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Got to look after our open space.
So I think another one of the big issues that's come up for the last few terms, I guess fair to say, would be the highball stadium. I think, I come from a soccer background, but I always do look at the basketball community and think, really tough. They don't have a home in the Moonee Valley. A lot of these clubs are run out of like school halls and that sort of stuff. And I know there's no simple solution to finding 30, 40, whatever the number is now, million to build this highball stadium. What sort of, it's clear council's obviously going to need some sort of partner to make this happen, right? I know we've done some planning at Queen Grove. I guess, again, speaking personally and not on behalf of council, I know this is something that you've sort of passionately advocated for, though, in the past. So where do you sort of see this and how far can we get down that path this term?
Well, it is in the council's endorsed advocacy strategy, and I'm sure that the mayor will absolutely be speaking on this coming into whenever there's meetings and whatnot that she'll be having, and passionately so. There's thousands of people who want an indoor stadium in Moonee Valley, and personally, I think that it's a really good idea. Yeah. I've always, and I've never hidden from the fact that I think that keeping our kids, even keeping ourselves fit, healthy and active is incredibly important. And if we have the option to be able to create a facility that can get people off their backsides, doing a workout, whatever that may be, it's really important. We don't have an indoor stadium in Moonee Valley. Unfortunately, they are incredibly expensive to build. And it would likely be that a partner will be required. What that looks like, who knows? There's a federal election coming up. Wouldn't it be lovely if Moonee Valley got some money? But it would have to be. Actually, no, I better just be mindful with what I say there because I don't want to speak. But I would hope that anyone who's been elected into their position sees that the people of Moonee Valley really want more indoor courts. As they want more infrastructure for
in general,
just in general. I think there's lots of sports that are advocating for.
And I'm part of that, but I think the basketball one in particular is the one glaring maybe thing that we're missing. We've got great centres for hockey, we've got great centres for baseball, I know there's there is a soccer hub also that's sort of being discussed as well, but the basketball one is one that I think is maybe the glaring gap in our sports sort of.
We are an incredibly sporty municipality. Like
Yeah.
we're the home of the EDFL. Like we have great sporting opportunities,
Yeah.
and there will come a stage where we can't have everything.
Yeah.
Especially as you said before, we can't build double-decker stadiums or whatnot. We're already not meeting the capacity demands for a lot of sports, unfortunately. But it's something that every municipality is struggling with.
I know obviously there's only so much we can do within our confines, but does council ever look at other councils and look for partnerships there, or is that not something?
Time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
There's no reason why one council needs to have everything. We can absolutely rely on another council to provide something, and likewise, especially we border onto something. We're not going to say to the people of City of Melbourne, "Oh no, you can't use Flemington Library."
Yeah.
No, we're all in it together, generally speaking, and.
Great. All right. Well, normally when we're wrapping these things up, we ask our guests to sort of give us some of their Valley faves. So when you're looking for your favourite cup of coffee in the Moonee Valley, and this one always trips people up because I don't want to offend any of their favourite baristas, but where do you go for your favourite cup of coffee in the Valley?
Depends what time of the day it is. If I've just done school drop-off, it's often the Milk Bar or Mr. Hoffman's on Hoffman's Road.
Yeah.
I do like to share the love, but I'm often there.
Mm-hmm.
Or down Keilor Road, I suppose, depending on which way. If I'm in the car and I'm driving, might be Strudel's, might be Oliver's, Tin Roof.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. Oh, I thought that I wasn't going to be sitting on the fence there. I did just name a few, didn't I?
That's all right. The good thing is, no matter which way you're going, there's a good cup of coffee waiting for you. I think that's the message I took out of that. So
yeah, I don't think you're going to go too far wrong.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite dinner spot in the Moonee Valley?
Favourite dinner spot? Keilor Road on a Sunday afternoon when those umbrellas are out.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick any of the restaurants along there, you're going to do well.
Yeah.
And House of Fides is expanding, and that is incredibly exciting.
Yes, very good shout. Very good shout. You mentioned, you love your waterways. You love to sort of zone out. Where's your favourite sort of chill out spot when you need to, just go off and turn off the chaos, as I think you said before?
Yeah, absolutely. Still Creek.
Still Creek. Yeah.
I'm down there a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. I would say an honourable mention to the Green Spine. Also very, it's not really, I don't know whether I can say underutilised. It's a bit of a hidden gem.
It is.
People in Airport West, we're very fond of it.
Yeah.
But I would say we don't necessarily get as many people from outside of Airport West coming in, which is a good thing. So maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No, but it was pretty busy in COVID. I remember because I lived in Airport West during COVID, and the Green Spine was, pretty active.
Absolutely.
People using that for their whatever limit of daily exercise we're allowed to have, whatever it was. But and it, it conveniently takes you up to Roasting Warehouse if you follow it all the way. So that was always a good sort of morning trek. But
my kids were at the childcare centre. They're not there anymore, so I feel like I can say it, but they were there, and it was a really good place to drop the kids off at childcare, go for a walk, and I see lots of people who do that same thing. So,
it's probably, I'm not in Airport West anymore, but that's one part of Airport West I really miss, the Green Spine. It's very good, very good. I've got Bowling Reserve now, which is good. So
also good.
Yeah.
Yes. Always improving Green Spine too.
Yeah, there's a toilet there now.
Things. The toilet was so exciting. The toilet was one of those things that the day we opened, people said, but there's no toilet.
Yeah.
And so something that was obviously, through community feedback, the council was able to find a way to get it in, which was so exciting.
And there was some nice art installations that were done, particularly around that COVID time, I think, that were good, that sort of spruced it up a bit as well, which was
good
really
feedback.
Good feedback. Very good. So looking ahead, what do you see, as Moonee Valley's priorities over the next 10 to 15 years? I don't know if you want to be a councillor for the next 10 to 15 years, but
Moonee Valley priorities or mine?
Yours.
I don't know.
How do you sort of see? What do you think the big important issues are going to be in the Moonee Valley the next 10 or so years?
Well, I think the housing is going to be big, to see how much that changes things. There's various feedback in terms of what people think of Moonee Ponds and how much that's changed over the last 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Obviously, Keilor Road won't be the same as what Moonee Ponds is.
Yeah.
But the housing targets are big, and it will be interesting to see how that changes the area. If I'm still sitting here in 10 to 15 years and there's no indoor stadium, I think that I would have failed as a councillor.
All right, we said it first.
But yeah, you heard it here first. Be a bit awkward.
Yeah.
You can only one vote in 9, but
That's it.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how big projects like that have been incredibly important to the community for a long time progress.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Sam, thanks so much for jumping on and sharing a bit of your story with us today.
No problems. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, that's another episode of the Moonee Valley Voices wrapped up. Thanks again for tuning in. Tune in next week for a new episode.